And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Layla Anderson. I'm the strategy and culture consultant at People Partner Solutions. I'm so happy to be here hosting the Go Live Mastermind for Barter Black. Barter Black's an incredible platform. I love connecting with entrepreneurs and learning and growing together. So definitely check out Barter Black and join if you're not already a member. We'll wait just a few minutes here. As you come in, I'd love to know what city you're in, if you can drop it in the chat. Like I said, my name is Layla Anderson. I'm the strategy and culture consultant here at People Partner Solutions. Today, I'm hosting a Go Live mastermind on designing your organizational structure. All right, let's begin. So, a little bit about me. I am the owner and lead consultant at People Partner Solutions. I'm an applied scientist with my master's in industrial organizational psychology from the University of Southern California. Right on. I have my bachelor's in psychology and Spanish from Wellesley College. Today, we have three objectives. We want to understand the key organizational structures and their impact. We want to assess whether your organization structure supports or hinders your goals, and lay the foundation for making intentional design choices. Today is about thinking critically about structure. It's not just memorizing the types of organizations. And I really want this session to be engaging and transformational for all of us. So I'll use as many real life scenarios as I can, and you're definitely encouraged to share your experiences and questions in the chat. All right. What is organizational structure? An organizational structure is a system that outlines how a company is organized and how it operates. So, why does this even matter? Why study types of organizations? Well, it helps us to define the roles, responsibilities, authority, and communication among employees and managers in an organization. It shows the chain of command and the flow of information between different levels and teams. What's the point of defining the org structure for yourself? Why even know what your org structure is? So, here are some of the key benefits. It provides accountability, it clarifies the expectations for everyone involved. It helps to document the criteria for promotion and termination at all levels of the organization. It designates the decision making authority, creates efficiency, and fosters collaboration. When we talk about the things that make or break an organization, it's usually many of the things on this list, like knowing exactly who to go to for support on a project, or having no idea what success looks like in your role. These are the things that make or break the employee experience. So, this system for organizing people within a company, it makes a great impact on the perceptions of the people within. I'm launching a 4-part course as part of my membership in the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center's Milestone Circles. The course is called Build Better, and part one is building with intention. Today, you guys are the first ones to hear my course, part one, and I'd love to get your feedback. So, we're going to focus today on the traditional org structures and their hierarchies, with the knowledge that each structure has a different impact on communication, workflow, innovation, and culture. So, what are the common structures? The most common organizational structures include functional, divisional, flat, matrix, and geographical. We'll be going through a few of these today. And on this chart, you can see that they're organized by which are more siloed, meaning more isolated from each other, or more open, which means people are allowed to access one another. At the top, we have the more siloed organizations, the functional and divisional structures. And at the bottom are the more free flowing and which are the matrix and the flat. So let's get into the first structure, which is functional or role based. And let me know if you have any questions along the way. So, a functional structure, what is it? It's one of the most common organizational structures. It includes clearly defined roles, job functions, chains of command, and decision making authority. It flows in a vertical hierarchical arrangement. So, as you can see from the top, the CEO is clearly in charge of the VP level. And each VP of sales, marketing, and engineering, they're all in charge of their functional department. Sales managers report directly to the VP of sales, marketing managers report directly to the VP of marketing. It's very clear who's in charge of who. So, I'd love to try out a scenario with you. If you're a senior marketing manager at Meta who wants to launch a new app to rival TikTok, how would you go about getting a prototype for this app developed and launched if you're in a functional organizational structure? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it, and I'd love for you to drop your answers in the chat. Great. So, what felt frustrating or empowering about that model? Usually, I hear that it's a little bit frustrating to try to go through multiple approval layers before you can get your idea activated on. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat. I would have to get approval from the VP, and then most likely they would need to pitch to the CEO and report back whether or not it was approved for me to even work on this idea. That's exactly it. And depending on your work style, that could be frustrating or empowering. So, another good question is how are roles, power, and values showing up in this structure? In this scenario where we're having to go through multiple approval layers, if the structure at the top doesn't agree, we can't move forward. So power is very clear, roles are delineated, and it may be an expression of the values of the company if you choose to style your organization in this way. It may say that we value order, we value accountability and hierarchy. something to keep in mind as you design your organizations. So, what works about the functional model? The roles, responsibilities, and authority are clearly defined. The employees are grouped based on their expertise, their skills, or their related roles, which allows for specialization. And as the organization grows, each department can focus on its specific function, which maintains efficiency. And most clearly, employees know what their job functions are, and they know exactly who they're reporting to. This allows for accountability and, in some cases, better performance. What's the downside? One potential downside is that employees need to seek approval before making decisions. This can slow operations. And there's a potential loss of cross departmental communication and collaboration due to the siloed structure. This rigidity may even impede employee growth or innovation. So let's move on to the next structure, which is divisional. The divisional structure is the product or market based structure. This structure is also hierarchical, vertical, and it's centralized. It features a clearly defined chain of command, but it's organized around the products or markets rather than the traditional job roles or functions. Has anyone ever worked in an organization like this, where you're focused on delivering your product? Whether you're in engineering, marketing, or sales, you're in charge of one product. Some of the most famous companies have this structure: McDonald's, Samsung, Walt Disney, to name a few. These companies can also be divided based off of key demographics like age groups or film genres, languages, and each market or location would also have a clearly defined chain of command. Why does this structure work? Again, the roles, responsibility, and authority are clearly defined along the product or market lines. It's beneficial to companies that have several product lines or markets. And the lines of authority are clearly defined. Employees are grouped in cross functional teams, allowing for communication. When your company is rolling out refrigerators, computers, smartphones, kind of like a Samsung, it's helpful to have a structure for addressing each aspect of the individual products and making sure nothing is lost. So there'll be a clear line of authority to address each customer segment for the products. Unlike the functional model, where the people are grouped in the cross-functional teams, right here they're able to communicate about the entire product or market and focus specifically on what they're delivering. Does that difference kind of make sense between the functional and the divisional markets? I hope so. So, what's the downside here? Employees also in this structure need to seek approval before making decisions, which also can slow operations. It could be inefficient if there are similar functions happening across the company without cross team communication. Going back to the Samsung example, if you're launching a smartphone and a refrigerator, each product has its own marketing team. After you launch a campaign for one product, you may be starting from scratch on the marketing of the next if there's no communication. The operating costs for these types of organizations tend to be higher because there's a lot of potential redundancies. But if you're successful, the revenue will also be higher. Great. I'm so glad it's making sense so far. The last drawback is that there's an increased risk of incompatibility or rivalry among the teams. And this is really a common concern when the teams are independent and the budgets depend on your sales. Departments may be competing for those ad dollars. But keeping rivalries at bay has to be intentionally addressed by leadership if you want to foster a culture of inclusivity and collaboration. I'm going to slow down a little bit here and make sure we're all on the same page. I get excited talking about organizational structures. It's a huge passion of mine, and bringing that clarity to business leaders, especially small business leaders, about how the decisions they make early on could impact their teams 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So let's talk about a geographical structure. The geographical structure, unsurprisingly, organizes the company's operations based on geographic regions. Each region becomes a distinct entity within the organization, often with its own management and decision making authority. This structure is similar to the divisional or product based structure, but on a much larger scale. As you see, we're talking about our own organizations in the Americas, Brazil, Asia Pacific, Western Europe, and each is going to function almost autonomously. So, why does this work? It allows operations to meet the needs of a local customer. This is especially true for businesses that operate across vast geographical areas like the entire globe, or in sectors where being close to customers and suppliers is vital. This structure allows for customized arrangements that align with the culture, the language, and the business norms of each specific location. Some other pros could be increased efficiency from running entirely on location, or leadership opportunities when you have global sales teams. There's also the flexible market response, which I think is probably the most important. So, what's the downside? I'm so glad this information is helpful. What's the downside here of a geographical structure? There's always the potential for conflict between the local and central management on operations and or culture. If you're the senior sales leader in Brazil, you may have a cultural norm difference between the headquarters in Seattle or vice versa. It may also be more expensive since you're duplicating these responsibilities across the globe, having 15 marketing managers instead of just one or two. The final structure we're going to cover today is the matrix structure. This structure is the most complex, and it's not often used as it can be a little difficult to implement well. What it is, it's a grid like arrangement, so it's unlike all of the rest. It combines the hierarchical structure with a functional model, pulling in the best of each functional team to deliver on a specific project. Employees will have several reporting responsibilities, which makes it complex. You may not just report to your functional manager, but also a project manager. So, why does this system work? It provides flexibility. It allows you to share resources across the organization, and it promotes collaboration within the org. It allows employees to develop new skills that they wouldn't if they stayed within their functional team. And what's the downside? This structure can be extremely intricate and it can be confusing about who you're supposed to respond to. With you have a project manager and your functional manager and your C suite, new hires can get a little bit confused as to what's most important and who do I report to. In this structure, teams can also be easily overloaded with too much work. If there are multiple projects going on, led by multiple department heads, and the chain of command is not as clearly defined, it can become a little bit chaotic or exhausting. This structure is reminiscent of production teams to me personally, where you have all of these different players coming in to collaborate on, let's say, a film. And there may be many iterations of the project and many little projects within, and everyone has to be ready to jump in. In those scenarios, once the project is over, there's a huge sigh of relief because it's so much work. So if that goes on over and over, it could be a little exhausting for the teams. So that's the overview of the basic structures that we're going to be covering today in part one. And I'd love for you to take a moment to reflect on your own organization. The key elements in org structures, as we covered today, are the chain of command, the roles and responsibility, the scope of control, decision making authority, and which departments and teams even exist within your org. I think it's important as leaders to take the time to reflect on these elements and understand, are they clearly defined? Are they siloed? Do we have a flat structure? So, thinking about your current workplace or previous organization, I'd love for you to complete this sentence. I want our organization structure to feel more blank so that we can blank. Maybe you want your structure to feel more organized so that you can achieve more goals, new projects. Maybe you want it to feel more flexible so that you can learn new skills. I don't think there's any right answer here, but it really depends on the type of feel that you want to have and the intention that you're bringing to your organization. Okay, so I see a comment. I want our organization structure to feel more siloed and clear so that we can work asynchronously. That's a huge one in our modern world. We don't want to have to have a full consensus on every single item. That makes complete sense, especially in remote work. Thanks so much for interacting today. If you have any questions, I will be around. Thank you so much for joining today and participating. Like I said, this is part one of a 4-part course on intentional organizational design. The full course is launching in June, and I can't wait to share it with you. I will drop the link in the chat for whoever would like to pre register. You can also find it at my website, www.peoplepartner.us. I'd love to find a blend so there's still collaboration, but the team needing approval on everything feels both inefficient and empowering at the same time. I think that makes complete sense. And it opens the door to talk about the type of culture and environment that you want to have, what efficiency looks like, Oh, great. I want my org structure to feel more streamlined so that we can achieve goals quicker. Makes complete sense. Efficiency is a huge and important value. Thank you guys so much for engaging. I hope you learned a little bit about organizational structures and why they matter, how they impact your teams. And I'd love for you to join part two, which is about leadership styles. Thank you. Yes. So you can visit it. You can contact me here on LinkedIn or at my email, layla@peoplepartner.us. It was so wonderful having you guys today. And before I forget, I also have a free diagnostic tool for you guys to understand a little bit about where where your current organization is right now, what your values are, or what your goals are. So take a look at this free tool if you want to do your own leadership assessment. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Be sure to check out the free tool and pre register at www.peoplepartner.us. Can't wait to see you guys there.